we've got all our speakers here, so I think I'm going to kick this thing off. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. I'm Andrea Hill, owner of Hill Management Group, and we are here with the latest installation in the MJSA webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about retail, specifically ideas about what might be happening next in retail. It's been a changing landscape for quite a few years now. This is not new, but with COVID-19, the trajectory has probably shifted and been sped up, and we'd like to talk about some ideas around that. My guests today are Pam Levine, owner of Levine Luxury Branding. She's been consulting this space for many years, focused on the luxury retail experience. Melissa Quick, she's the owner of Steve Quick Jeweler in Chicago, a luxury designer jewelry brand store. We have David Kepron, who's the author of Retail Evolution, because it's about revolution and evolution. That book's amazing. I just spent the weekend reading it, and I highly recommend it to everyone. It really makes you think about spaces in different ways, and really stimulates a lot of thought process about retail. And we have Eric Zuckerman. Eric is the president of Pack Team Group. I never know whether to say Pack Team Group or Pack Team America, but you're international. Pack Team retail build-outs, and they focus specifically on luxury retail. And during the COVID crisis, Eric shifted their manufacturing to making PPE and support product for organizations that are trying to help deal with the crisis. And in the process has developed some pretty interesting insights about what needs to happen at luxury retail besides just having a bunch of Purell bottles scattered all over the place. So this panel, first of all, thank you, Pam. Pam introduced me to both David and Eric, and I'm really pleased for the introductions. It was so helpful. And now I have two new experts that I can call on, which is very exciting to me. So many thanks to you for helping put this together.
My pleasure.
And we are just going to talk about retail today, but I'm going to preface it by saying, if you came here looking for answers about what the future brings, if you're going to any webinar looking for answers to what the future brings, I will start by saying nobody knows. You do not know how this thing unfolds, okay? And as humans, we hate uncertainty. We absolutely hate it. We will invest in every possible pill, religion, and guru to tell us what the future holds. But we don't get to know that. But what we do get to do is we get to think and imagine and ask questions and surround ourselves with experts. And in that process, in the synergy of all that, you will start gaining the information you need to invent the right future for your business based on your brand and your strategy. And that's what we have on offer today. A thoughtful conversation with a lot of different expertise and process in the mix to get you thinking about what your future should look like. So with that, my first question for the group is, and anyone jump in with your answer, what keeps you up at night right now, besides getting sick? You know, when you're thinking about retail and what happens in commerce, what's keeping you up at night right now?
I'll take don't know what's going on for 500. This is the lightning round.
And I take it you like knowing what's going on.
Well, I think generally, as humans, we all want to know what's going on. Right? There's a sense of predictability, and the sense of it is a way to certainly reduce the anxiety of not knowing. I think we're biologically wired to want to know, what that thing is over there in the grass, or what the next step is going to be. We need to know what people's facial reactions are so that we can gauge likely what their intent is. We're really good at doing things like that. And this week, put a question mark on everything. Like I had written a blog recently. I said, I thought I had 2020 all figured out. I knew what to do. I was going to step away from my role as vice president at Marriott and go on to this other thing. And now all that other thing is just a question mark. And it's hard. I mean, to be candid, it's hard to live in that place where you don't really know. But it is, not surprisingly, the area where you grow the most when you don't have the answer. And you just have to step into that void and try to fill it in with what you intuitively feel is right for you at that phase, and take some risk, which is not easy for a lot of people.
I'd like to, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, I don't know if it keeps me up at night, but is how the innovation, how this is going to affect innovation, because it's kind of amazing if you think of the fact that we've all been forced to stay home and reflect. And I think in that reflection, that's the piece that's going to bring us all to a new place. I'm looking at, are the things in retail, in the brick and mortar, that have been challenged by e-commerce and the digital age for so long, are they going to be the same things going forward? I mean, the one thing we know is that we have to, that safety is very important going, as everything opens up. That's where our hearts are going to be. That's where our clients, our employees, our staff. And I think that is going to also change. I think that has changed already a mindset. I'm not saying that there aren't the economy and the fallout from what's happening now isn't going to be very tough and difficult. And certainly, we are in a luxury space that we're working in. But I do think that everything is going, because safety and care are now at the top of the list. I think that there is going to be much more attention to a different level of humanity, I want to say.
That's a good thing to worry about. What if the rest? Anything keeping you guys up at night, Eric and Melissa?
For sure. For me, as an employer, uncertainty has its pressures, and so look, I guess the thing that always keeps me up at night is, people who work for me and my ability to keep figuring it out so I can keep them on board, and when you have a business, these people become part of your family. And it's a great motivator because I feel like I have to figure it out because I have no other choice, because I want to figure it out for them. So it's a great motivator, but it certainly keeps me up because a lot of people are depending on it to get it right. And so, although it keeps me up, it's an important kick in the tuchus to keep me moving forward because, like I said, I really want to figure it out. And it keeps me moving.
Yep, that is a good motivator.
I think I'm sorry if you wanted to move on. I was just going to say, definitely thinking about the team is a big part of it. And I'm trying to take a much more Zen-like approach right now because I lost so much sleep the beginning of March, going into March and April. And now I just have to accept that there are some things that are so out of my control that I can't let it make me sick. Like, forget COVID sick, but when you stop eating and you stop sleeping, and then you put this added pressure on yourself that there are a lot of people counting on you, it really was very detrimental to my well-being. And so I had to stop it. And I had to start really thinking about how can I be more effective, and how can I just be a little bit more calm about it. I'm not one that's prone to anxiety, but there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of lost sleep. So the other thing is, in Illinois, at least for us, it's constantly changing. And there was a lot of sleep being lost on making plans for what our closing was going to look like and what our reopening is going to look like. And our reopening plan has changed at least 4 times from the time we closed. Not our specific plan, the plan that our governor is giving us. And now we were starting to plan to reopen on June 1st, and the mayor of the city of Chicago just last week said we will not be opening with the rest of the state. So I can't keep losing sleep over it because I really do want to be my most effective self. And as soon as somebody gives me that date, then I'll probably start losing sleep again, just because I'll have a lot of planning and a lot of implementing to do. and whatever that short window of time is that they give us to do it.
And not to give you a chance to lose any more sleep, but I do think the fact that employees now, that people may have their children at home, that they may not be, that their whole the dynamics at home are changing so much. And so you have a whole new level of elements to deal with on the personal side. And that really ups the ante.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I wonder, because there's a certain amount of intensity to running a retail store and being the retail manager. And, it's your hours are different than people who work regular office jobs or service jobs. And everybody that shut down and stayed home for a while. And do you think it caused people to kind of question the way we approach the work? Because the way retailers approach the work is going to change retail or affect retail.
Yeah. Should I weigh in on that one we should have buzzers.
I'm going to give you a buzzer for the next webinar, David.
I think there's a lot of great reading out there. McKinsey's doing a pretty good job, I think, of trying to paint the picture, for the reintegration of the workforce into workplaces. There was something I read last week about American Eagle, I think, now taking key item presentation tables and changing out product for hand sanitizer and wipes, and Victoria's Secret taking all the panties off the panty table. And you don't try them on, you don't touch them, you don't move anywhere. Now, that sort of fundamentally changes merchandising approaches across categories, right? Where value presentations based on the unit volume of stuff you have in a place is a direct perception to how you perceive quality and value and price point and all those things. That's going to be an interesting play, I think, in the retail space where you don't have product density to tell stories anymore. You may have to rely on sales associates' ability to sort of explain the narrative of the brand, the category, whatever it is, which I think changes that interaction opportunity, which was interesting. The strange thing, or maybe interesting thing, is that, and I think, Andrea, you talked about my book, and I've written about this idea that, when you think about the virtual shopping place, you only see one of whatever it is, right? You may see a category with, an assortment planned and chosen for you. If people bought this, they might likely buy those things based on, machine learning and things that people are doing in shopping. And now the physical stores, and if you can take Victoria's Secret as an example of this, are shifting to that online merchandising paradigm. I don't need to see 100 of the same thing in 5 different colorways. Maybe I see one of each in one colorway, and I can simply shop that way once I know my size. Now, it gives the opportunity for, intimates is a difficult category anyway, where price sizing or fitting is usually not well understood anyhow. So it gives the opportunity for that guest interaction protocol to fundamentally change, where you're talking about associates' knowledge base and how to really help guests navigate their way through that assortment, which I think is an interesting opportunity. If we want to continue to look at this less as, woe is me, oh my God, I don't know where we're going, to seeing where the opportunities lie, to creating better interactions with our guests, to be able to tell brand stories maybe in a different way, and whether or not merchandise and merchandise presentation really is something that helps to sell beyond volume presentations. I think they're all great things to think about in terms of merchandising stores.
Well, and the merchandising paradigm's totally up for grabs right now. Melissa's husband actually just yesterday said to me, I am loving this appointment one-on-one thing.
Yeah.
He said, my close rate's 100%. I'm just doing one appointment at a time. So what could be changing in the way now jewelry retail merchandises differently than apparel retail? We usually are showing one of something, but what are the ways that merchandising could change to reflect this new reality? And Eric, are you thinking about that in build-outs?
Yeah, Eric, I was thinking Eric should definitely chime in here because I'd like to take off after.
And me too. This is getting exciting.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think the big question is what is going to be that experience for the consumer that drives them into the physical space. And I think the opportunity, obviously before this all happened, was all about a more educated consumer and more interactions and allowing them to learn more about the product on their own, let's say, before a sales professional. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think that the idea of going into the store is that old mentality of just stuff as many SKUs as you can in a case, and sooner or later they might find what they're looking for is totally not going to work. I think what we're really looking at with our customers is how does your customer get really educated on your brands and your products, and so when they come into that environment, it's not so much about seeking that product. It's more about kind of expanding upon what they've already learned on their own. So I think it's going to be a more intimate space. I think it's going to be, I think the sales is going to have maybe a different role, which is not so much maybe selling the jewelry or the watches or whatever it might be, but more so helping guide them. And a lot more opportunities for the client to learn about the product on their own space, on their own device, in their own way before actually physically interacting with the product. I mean, I also, it's thinking about that mentality, especially for the next year or so when stores open up, is that idea before is, oh, I'll go and try on 15 different different earrings. The next idea of touching things is kind of off-putting. So the whole mentality is to go shop for jewelry without requiring people to touch more than they want to touch or they need to touch. Because the desire of touching is now different.
But I still think the reality that the more you touch, the more you buy. I mean, getting it on a hand is is the key to, or on the body, is really the key to that experience. And I also think that one of the things that does keep me up at night is materials, texture, are all those things going to, because they do have a very strong sensory, they do play a very big role in how we make decisions. If we are protecting or not working the same way with our cases, will the whole idea turn more into a salon kind of interaction? And, I think that there's just going to be a lot of change in how we access the product. The one thing I did want to mention, I don't know if you're saving this to later, is one of the products that Eric's company that you've come up with, which I think really alleviates a lot of the concern around jewelry. Was that something, Andrea and Eric, that you wanted to hold off on, or?
No, I think it's fine. The
conversation can talk about what you've been doing behind the scenes in a very quick way. For the jewelry industry, because that's one of the most exciting elements that I've found through this whole thing.
In terms of sanitizing jewelry, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so Eric, because that's one, I said that at the beginning, we don't need a bunch of Purell bottles lying around luxury jewelry stores. It doesn't fit the vibe. So what do people, not so much a particular device, but what do retailers need to be thinking about to set up for this safe, healthy environment, knowing that in different parts of the country, people are expressing very different levels of concern as well. The heightened concern in the major cities is not being reflected in the more rural areas because they haven't been hit the same way.
Right.
Right. I mean, for me, there's the practical safety, right? There's the, how do we keep our employees and our customers? But I think not more importantly, but I think more prevalent is how do we make people confident to be in this space? And so the things that we're looking at are not only from pure safety perspective, but that when a customer comes into that space, that they're confident to be in there. And whether that is, for instance, how you sanitize yourself before entering that space. So we created these beautiful hand sanitizer dispensers that can actually match the interior of the store. We're actually doing some with some customers that do a temperature check when you enter the store, So everyone in that store knows that no one's in there 130-degree temperature. Again, it's all about, one, sanitizing, but also having confidence that you're in a space that they're doing something to make sure people are being checked. And
Well,
then
and
the other, yeah.
Well, I suspect that's a very important confidence.
Is the process that a jeweler does when engaging with the customer, so they feel confident that pieces that they're touching are clean.
So, Carol Creek's on the. By the way, speakers, maybe we should all mute our microphones when we're not talking. See if we can kill some of this reverb. We just have to remember to turn them back on when we start opening our mouths.
I just wanted to say one thing. I'm having troubles. Eric seems to be coming in and out. I don't know if that's my computer.
No, it's bandwidth on Eric's side. So but we can probably improve the sound a little just by muting our individual mics. So Carol Creeks is pointing out that, and I wanted to challenge this too. And Pam, I get it. I didn't say this about Pam, but Pam's a master jeweler. So she's known for luxury branding, but Pam can make models. So if she understands the metal, the texture, she gets making jewelry. And yet, do we really think the touching is going to be just as important in the future as it has been in the past? We've bought into this idea that everything has to be touched and held and handled to buy it. Does it have to be? And what other things can we do to make a buying experience vibrant and full and intellectually engaging that don't necessarily involve touch? Remembering also that a lot of pre-shopping is being done online now, long before COVID hit.
I'll chime in on that just because I've had this experience of having been closed since the second week of March. And a lot of my customer interactions are that they want to see it. They want to see it or touch it or have some sort of in-person interaction with it. So I've done a lot of virtual appointments with people and sent a lot of pictures via email or had interactions with people on our Instagram account, which happens quite a bit too. And what I'm finding, and is surprising me because it's generally our younger clientele, it's not just Gen X and above, is, you know what, I love it, but I want to see it. I want to see it next to my engagement ring. We've postponed our wedding. I don't have to buy this today. I'd rather wait until you're open because I want to see how they look together. And so I'm seeing a lot of that is that they're doing their pre-shopping. They have a little bit of pent up, like, I need retail therapy happening, but not enough so that they're going to buy something without being able to see if it's the perfect fit. And I wonder if that's just because with millennials and Gen Z, there is a limited budget and they want to make sure that they're really making the right purchase and not making a purchase online just to buy something. I don't know if that's it, but I found like when we open, I'm going to have a ton of appointments with people who want to come in. They've done all their pre-shopping, but they're just not quite ready yet to pull the trigger because they want to see it, try it, touch it.
I'd like to also say I do know that there are a number of retailers and individual jewelers that are sending boxes to the client. They either have them pay for it first, and it could be a series of a few. I know one retailer who one jeweler who actually sends the box and then has them, they FedEx it to the next person. So it's a series of pieces. And I also had gotten a call early into this from a local retailer in Connecticut who was looking to add some AR or some augmented reality onto their computers and also find a way that their customers at home could try things on. And that's a whole other story, but I do think that what I found is a whole other story, but I do think that that's going to grow more and more. And also this kind of DIY, a lot of people doing videos, putting the ring on a hand, sending it out to, if it's actually a giftable purchase is being done, and some very, very expensive pieces. So that all suggests expanding the boundaries of the retail store, but in a different way than a website. Yes.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing there is and I was writing notes to myself. I was saying, you remember when Warby Parker, came on the scene, right? They'd box up 6 pairs of glasses and they'd send it to you, and you would like them or not like them, and you send them back. It's a little bit different when you're talking about jewelry, of course, get it. But if there was a super inexpensive, and I don't know the answer to this, but way to switch out diamonds for cut glass, but send out the assortment in the box, if you could assume that people wouldn't just like it just the way it is and sort of say, well, I'm not going to send it back, I'm going to have a cut glass, because who knows anyway. That would be kind of one interesting approach, to think about how you could do that. I'm not sure about I see it and then I pass it on to someone. If I was receiving a box knowing that it had been in someone else's house, I might not be so cool with that. Who knows, where it's coming from. But there are also lots of companies who are out there now who are making product. It's really a sustainability push. They're making product that is totally refillable, and you have your whatever soap and you package it up and you send it back to the company. They disinfect everything. They send it back to your house. Interesting approach. I just wanted, if I could, just go back to something you were talking about earlier in terms of the assortment. I think jewelry is a difficult category to shop in. Like eyewear is difficult to shop because you walk into most eyewear, stores or jewelry stores, and the assortment is so broad. And I think one of the interesting thing about this is, how do you navigate that assortment? Right? How does the guest have enough base knowledge to be able to make an educated decision about what they're buying? And I would say jewelry is difficult for most, because I don't know from diamonds. I had to go to a good, diamond vendor in the Diamond District in New York to buy my wife's ring, and relied on that knowledge. But I think one of the things this might do is, are we over assorted anyway? Do you really need to have all those SKUs? Can you be more confident about the ones you want to really put your money on, knowing that your customers that well? Does having that broad assortment confuse them and make it much less easy? Like, I'm going to use eyewear again. You go to the eyewear store, you could spend like an hour and a half in there, trying to figure out what you're doing with glasses. And I imagine it could be the same thing with jewelry. I haven't done that in a while. But I think it does sort of speak to this idea that this might be an opportunity to think about assortment planning, and how much we really need to have to be able to sell either a particular jewelry artist or a particular kind of setting. That might be one thing to think about. And then everyone was talking, I know, in the hospitality space about UV lighting and how UV lighting is a way to kill off this virus, right? So Marriott, for example, and other brands have developed these UV light wands and little robots that go into rooms, and they basically wash the place with UV light. And not too difficult to do. Can you rig UV lights into your casework, so that everything in that casework has got your typical, lighting, but also has a UV band that is continually just washing that product with UV light all day long. Maybe it's a selling feature. Maybe it's a way to say, yeah, no, we're totally cool with all these pieces in the jewelry case because they're sitting in this UV light, and that's killing off whatever is there anyway, if there happened to be a remnant or something. Just a thought.
Well, to the assortment question, because I think this is really important. I mean, I've been begging people to read The Paradox of Choice for years, because it's like too little choices is hard on a retailer, too much choice is hard on a retailer. But Melissa, you and Steve have had some interesting experience with this in the last year in terms of putting some designer collections back together. So have you discovered there's the place in the middle between too little and too much?
Goodness, well, we're operating too much for sure right now, but that's in part because we did a pretty major consolidation in 2019. So what had happened was we had 3 stores, and we decided, thankfully, strategically a year ago that we would be more adaptable being smaller, and it's really paid off with what 2020's turned out to be. So we do have too much jewelry, but that being said, we are really focusing on collections, and less is more for sure. So we're telling stories. We have enough from one specific designer to tell a story of what their collection looks like and feels like. We're displaying them as collections, but we're not putting inventory in the store just so that we can put a check mark in a column. So there's any given day you could walk into my store and you're not going to see a ruby you're not going to see an emerald, and we're not buying them just to buy them because jewelry stores are supposed to have rubies and emeralds. So, so yes, we are definitely being more selective in that way, and will continue to be so. And I think that that there is such a thing as having too little jewelry, though. You have to have a nice assortment for people, and you always have to make sure that you have the aspirational pieces. So if we looked just at spreadsheets and we saw that our sweet spot for price points was in the $500 to $1,000 range, does that mean that I'm not going to now stock $10,000, $15,000 pieces? I'm not. I am still going to stock those pieces. I don't want to overthink it and really try and hone down my inventory too much. It's a double-sided question, but
I'd like to. I was going to just jump in on the merchandising side, which is, that's something that's just very important, because adjacency, what happens inside the case and how the product, I'm not talking about quantity right now. I'm talking about really what it means to merchandise products together. There are all sorts of, there's a science to it. There's, anchoring, where you put certain pieces around a more expensive piece for the perception of it, so that the pieces that may not be as expensive take on a different experience. And I think that merchandising is still going to be extremely important, because it proves that that's how people understand and gain and make decisions. I think the other thing too is that stores before the pandemic, many of them, especially the older stores, businesses that have been around for a while, have had this issue of having too much product. They have old product that they haven't moved. And I wonder if that, what Melissa is talking about, it sounds like you have current design, you really, your product, your customer, and you're selling. It's the other stores, the older stores, that just have styles that aren't even relevant anymore. And, this is not a new issue, but I wonder if things are going to be sold off, or if people are going to reevaluate that so they can move forward. Mm. Because, the reality is the whole digital age, it's not just the older people trying to figure out how to integrate or adapt. People are born into this. This is no longer kind of, one or the other. And I think
it shouldn't be.
What?
At least it shouldn't be.
Right. And it is. And I do think the other thing that I'm really hoping will happen with our industry, and I'm talking about not just the larger stores that can afford it, is that they really pay attention more to the data mining, that they have an understanding of how many people, of how much data you can get that's attached to your CRM. And I know, Andrea, you can speak to this much more than I can, but there is a lot of data mining that we're not taking advantage of that we need to. So, but at the end of the day, I still think that what people are going into stores for is a unique experience. I still believe that the store really solidifies the relationship. And I guess at the bottom line, all of this that we're talking about is it's really that relationship. It's the relationships you had before the pandemic, how you've nurtured and kept those alive during, and how you will grow. And I think that the fact that we've all had to retreat gives us some perspective on who are we today, and are we portraying the brand that we were, and is it relevant anymore, and does it still represent who we are today?
So. And I kind of wonder, aren't we, and it seems to me that merchandising has been a little too much navel gazing in the last 10, 15 years. It's all about what I want to sell, or what deals I made, or what I have to offer, as opposed to who's my customer, and why do I matter to them, and what are they looking for? And in some ways, I think we need to put the merchandising back into the merchant. And the merchant was always about, well, I grew up in this tiny town in Iowa called Webster City, Iowa. And there was a clothing store called Osweiler's. And when Mr. Osweiler, my mom was a clothes horse. Oh my God, the woman could dress. And she this tiny, perfect little thing. And Mr. Osweiler would call her when he got new outfits in and say, Francine, I have something perfect for you. He knew what she wore. He merchandised for her and also for Linda Latella next door and for Mrs. Rouse on the other side. If you know who your customer is, you don't have to carry everything, right?
Well,
Data mining helps you understand that.
I think that's the inherent challenge with, not specifically with the retail or the jewelry space, but everyone knows that it does sort of suggest that I'm not exactly sure who my customer is, and I'm not really that willing to go out on a limb, stand for the one thing that I believe in because I know I have a market for that. I'm going to do a sort of a broad spectrum, shot and hope that I catch people from all categories. Those who want the 15,000, which I'm sure there are many of them, and those who want to spend 1,500 or less, right? So, it's a risky and equally courageous thing to do as a retailer to say, I know what I'm about, and I don't need everybody. I just need that one person who likes that. And I think that's hard for many people to do, but it's also been, I think, the downfall of retail experiences where that sense of confidence about the brand story is diminished, and why many retailers across multiple categories frankly look the same, because they're all carrying kind of sort of the same stuff, maybe a little bit color change, a little bit, whatever, but many of those things are the same. I would love to see a jewelry store, and anyone who wants to design this after this call, feel free to call. Jean Moore was the most brilliant jewelry merchandiser ever to have, been in the industry, right? When he was at Tiffany, he would tell stories that were remarkable in little boxes, this big. 1 or 3 or 5 products, and that's it.
Does everybody know who Jean Moore is?
Oh, Jean Moore was the visual merchandising director for Tiffany's for years.
Who did all the windows.
Beautiful, beautiful work up on Fifth Avenue. He was one of those iconic visual merchandisers who took the art of visual merchandising presentation to a whole new level. Mm-hmm. I would love to see a store that was just a sea of podiums where you had these beautifully articulated stories where 1 or 3 products, that's all. And you go through and every single one of those podiums had these remarkably designed visual displays that were all about the story of their product. Is there more depth in the assortment? Maybe. Are there other pieces that could be added in? Could be. But that would be like a completely different world than going into the sea of cases in Diamond Alley and trying to make a choice on a Saturday afternoon about what I'm going to buy. I mean, that's like that would make me want to go. Rather than shopping what seems to be a commoditized approach to merchandising a category that's not a commodity. It's probably one of the largest non-commodities that people will ever spend on, other than like a car. I don't know, maybe that's a commodity too, but that sort of aspirational purchase is one of the largest, layouts of cash people are going to make in their life, for one of the most meaningful moments of their lives, usually, that they always refer back to. And so I think stores should reflect that. And I never been to your store, so I don't know. But I'm hoping that we'd see more of that, because I think that would be a game changer for me really wanting to go and have that experience in a jewelry place that was about storytelling in a very different way.
I do think that there's more of it out there, and it shows me that we as an industry have, there's a lot of preconceived notions, and there all also are, and I'm not trying to be chauvinistic here, but I think men are in stores, possibly in jewelry stores, possibly less than women. I don't know. But, with the self-purchaser, etc. But I also do think that when people think of jewelry stores, they think of 1 or 2 particular looks. You think of what you get in the mall, and then you think of your local store or whatever. And we are slow adapters anyway. And there is there's a lot of room for, again, innovation and really telling that story. But there are some stores that are really doing it beautifully. So.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think before the pandemic even began, we've started seeing a lot of that. I think the return to storytelling and tighter assortment and more focus on the customer experience, I think all those things were happening a lot in jewelry. And I don't believe personally that despite virtual and not touching this and that the jewelry store, the physical shopping experience is going to go anywhere. I mean, the jewelry shopping experience has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Because as Melissa pointed out, it's not just about picking a piece off, and it's about having a relationship with the jeweler, having a relationship with the product, and then going and having an intimate connection with it before deciding to make that purchase. So I do think we have to evolve. I think that we have to meet the customer where they need to be met. I think we need to allow the customer to learn more about the products in their space. But at the end of the day, I do believe that a physical environment, a store, is still going to serve that purpose of being that experience, that destination for somebody to connect with what they're buying. If we return back to the Warby Parker experience, Warby Parker, yeah, it came off strong, but what did they end up doing? They really build up their business model. They built physical stores.
Absolutely, yeah.
They built physical stores. And so I do think that things are going to change, but I don't think it's all gloom out there. I think it's enough to have a new relationship with our customers. But I do think people are going to come back to stores as long as they're comfortable to be there. Absolutely.
Eric, I happen to think you're right, and I've always believed that. And I love technology, and Pam will know this about me. I'm like, my whole headspace recently is in immersive digital experiences, and how that's a game changer for hospitality and maybe retail as well. But one of the interesting things that I find is, you want to talk about silver linings or opportunities here, is that if people are likely more fearful and lacking in the trust about whether or not they will venture out, the commitment to go someplace has also increased in its one's commitment to do the shopping trip has now become a bit more of a tortured decision, or it's going to take more for me to get there, which only suggests, I think, that if I'm going to ask my customers to make that additional commitment where they're putting their life at risk, by going out into the real world where the invisible foe is, I had better make it worth their while if they're going to get to my place. And I think that is a really great opportunity for people to reevaluate what it is that makes them so special in a pretty crowded marketplace across categories, and whether, if they're going to make the commitment to come, I got to deliver something that is going to be pretty remarkable.
Which is not just about product.
Like Melissa kind of illustrated it perfectly, where before that shopping experience, you have this relationship with the customer, and then it's kind of that back and forth. But then it's kind of coming to that physical space for that final commitment. And I think that's going to be a lot of it. Is the customer learning more about your brand, more about your product on their own terms. Maybe not coming to shop just to browse carelessly. I think a lot more customers come with the mission. But when they come, like you said, about making that experience worth it, and that final chapter of that buying experience.
Which, by the way, for me as an architect, a designer of places and things, I don't think that's just about architecture and store design. I think that's about customer interaction protocols. It's about how you do all those other things that really put those bows and ribbons on an otherwise, great shopping experience as well.
And we have to be adaptable enough to tailor that experience to each person walking through the door. We need to figure out what it is that they need from us so that they feel safe and they feel secure and they're comfortable. And already I've discovered, just from people that I've been out making deliveries to, some people want 100% contact free, and other people want to stand at the door and chat as I'm making a delivery. It's going to be the same coming into the store. Some people are really going to want a lot of one-on-one time, and some people are going to want to just come in and make a decision quickly and leave. And we have to be able to judge what it is that they want from us. But if we're doing our jobs and we're asking the right questions and we're prepared, I think those of us that are small and adaptable will be able to tailor that experience for each person so that everybody leaves happy. And I think a lot of it is happening beforehand. I saw Andrea give a talk a year and a half ago at Centurion talking about that people used to need 10 different store visits before they could decide on who they wanted to commit to for their purchase. And they all do their homework ahead of time now. They'll maybe only make 2 store visits. And if I'm one of those 2 store visits, I need to be ready to give them that experience. They've already decided that I'm a potential person that they want to do business with. So what is it that happens when they walk in my store? How do I treat them? How do I handle it so that I delivered on those expectations that they had before they even walked in the door? And that's really going to be key.
I think what that means to Melissa is an uptick in EQ, right? Emotional intelligence for people who are in a sales associate role. That's a whole other training world for many people in the retail space, right? Getting a sales associate to really be able to identify sort of the mind-body state of people who are walking through the door, and all of them are different, and to your point, this idea of standing in the stoop or coming to the store, you don't have any clue when someone walks in the store whether they have a traumatic experience in the background of a family member getting sick and dying, or so that their somewhat distant approach to you is really born of a story that is very real for them, that sets them so it means being more trauma informed, which is, we're asking a lot from our sales associates, but I think that ultimately is the key to the great brand relationship, is the great guest relationship that's driven from our really being able to be empathic and understand. And it's not easy when you have thousands of people walking through the door, all individuals, and there is no one size fits all. But that idea of EQ and developing that in your staff makes a lot of sense.
Well, and being able to develop that in your people. And that means we have to be thinking a lot right now about what it means to be leaders of businesses. Because if you don't lead your business well, you're not going to inspire the best people to come and stay with you, and you're not going to be able to develop them and keep them for long periods of time. So not surprisingly, a lot of this conversation has gone to the product that we carry and how we merchandise them, but the people are a huge part of that experience. And if you want great people, you have to be a great leader. It's not an accident when that happens.
Yeah, but not everyone is Melissa.
Melissa's not even Melissa.
Really, this is impossible, right?
But these are developable skills. These are not, but they take commitment and discipline.
No, right, it does. It takes a commitment to training differently.
And I also think that what we're speaking to here is confidence of the retailer, which comes back to leadership. Is that, Melissa, it doesn't sound to me that you're questioning your product, which often these discussions can move into, do I have the right merchandise? That's not the issue right now. That's not what we're concerned about. We're concerned about that relationship. And at the end of the day, that's all we really have. And I think it's also trusting the relationships that you have. People are coming because of you, and certainly the environment and the context seal that and empower that and make it work, or turn it off. Imagine Eric has the most beautiful products, display products and beyond. But imagine if all of a sudden displays didn't have fabrics on them anymore. They were just, wooden boards. And, you wouldn't, if you took the creativity and some of the sensory and emotional elements out of the space and out of the experience, you wouldn't have the support of your environment and of the sales process. And the one thing I don't want to forget to say is that, and I have to say this also sort of ties to brand, that Melissa, the way you are speaking and thinking about your customers also is a reflection on your brand and your positioning. This is who you are as a company. And I think, again, that care, that's, what I call the silent salesperson, or one of those silent elements that come through as a brand. And Eric, who just, within 2 weeks of COVID, of the pandemic, nimbly, created all of these support elements, from shields to boxes where you can get tested. I'm sure I'm not saying it in the most proper way, for hospitals, and now has come up with and I want you to speak to this a sterilizing unit for jewelry. And, I think that, yes, it's fantastic and I'm excited about it, but it also really reflects on the brand and what you've done for who Pack Team is and how you've distinguished yourself from many other display companies just by showing this adaptability and care and nimbleness and where you focused through this whole being able to stay up at night and worry about things.
Which takes us back to one of David's early statements, which is, in those insecure times, there's a lot of scope for innovation and the imagination. And, we change during the hard times. We can develop. I want to keep talking, but I also would like to invite our audience to start posting any questions. You have these guys here. You can ask them questions. I would encourage you not to miss this opportunity. So if you'd like to just put your questions in the chat box, we will make sure that they get answered.
But we should have, Eric, I do want you to just explain your product. So we've got an audience here. You should let people know what you've developed for jewelry.
You're speaking about the sanitizing of the jewelry?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, so basically the way that we looked at it is that, jewelry in general is usually a presentation done with a pad. It's usually don't just take it out of the case and toss it to the customer. You're presenting your piece. And so we wanted to make an extension of that. So when a piece comes out of the showcase, that the customer has the confidence to engage with it. And so what we created was, it's essentially a pad. It's a jewelry pad. And there's a small UV, as you were talking about, UV before, chamber that you put the jewelry piece in. It does the UV light. They take it out. They have their microfiber cloth to wipe it down and place it onto the pad. A very quick process. But again, it's not only about the ritual, but it's also about treating the piece like what it is, which is something special, something that deserves to be cleaned and polished before being presented. And more so, it gives the customer the confidence of saying, okay, I can engage with this now. This retailer is obviously putting thought into the process to keep me safe. What we try to do when we come up with any product is not think about what we think looks cool, is think about the brands and the clients we work with and what can we create that can adapt to their environment. And I think for us, as you see, all these retailers putting up these plexiglass shields in front of their cash registers, we're seeing all these things and we're like, oh my, how do we do this without detracting from the environment? Our clients put so much care and thought into their environments. How can we make people feel safe without detracting from it, without making it look like an acrylic fortress of solitude? So all the products that we've been coming up with have been about creating that confidence, but also adding to the experience and not detracting from it.
David, you talk a lot in your book and in conversation about how retail is such an important part of the social fabric. Have you developed any theories on how being afraid to be around other people because they might breathe on you changes that thought process? Does it? Is it short term? Do you have a sense of it?
The funny thing about, sure. Everything in history is repeatable, which is great. And that's why I always go back to the 60s, when I grew up and I look at television shows like Get Smart. And they had the cone of silence. And you all might remember the cone of silence from Get Smart. And seriously, now I'm totally, I'm joking, but the cone of silence was this like acrylic cone that came over two people sitting at a conference table and you could hear everything. But they were apparently in this place where the sound disappeared. And I've seen a lot of those things that are coming now about conference rooms where you have literally these cones, like over acrylic cones. And I can't imagine a scenario where you're going to go and sit in there for an hour, and then I'm going to go in there right after you and sit in there for the next hour. You've just breathed all in that thing. And there's no ventilation. I'm thinking, why could that? It's like this doesn't make any sense. It's like being in the bubble where you're just going to breathe all the bad stuff that someone else put in there. But it is true in the end. This is why I think I agree with everybody that in the end, people will come back to being stores, assuming local governments allow them to do so. Because in the end, you're right. And certainly in a high touch sort of experience like this, where you do want to see it on your hands, even AR, despite the fact that I love the idea, is never going to really get close enough to putting that piece on my hand or my wrist and really seeing what it feels like and how it bumps up. I wear a number of rings, but how one bumps up against the other one. Those are all sensory things that are directly, embodied experiences that you can't ever approximate. You can approximate, but they'll never actually do the deal. And I think you're right that eventually people will want to go back to stores with all of these assurances that they feel more safe, that they know. And I love the idea of the presentation and the UV and the polishing and things. And that sort of elevates the product, I think. There's a story that's being just told in doing that makes a lot of sense. But I am, to be honest, ambivalent about others. I know we're talking about jewelry, but other segments of our economy like food and beverage, restaurants. How do you can't really get more than 2 seatings at a restaurant in an evening, but you're going to have half the amount of people there. So how do you make your margins in a business that's already really thin on margins? And I think that speaks to staffing models where maybe you don't have as many people, but that's a real problem if you go to this other side, which is that, well, a lot of the retail interactions about that social piece and searching luxury goods, having more associates than guests is part of the experience that you always know you're going to be weighted on. So I don't have the answer there, but and it's full of dichotomies. And I think it's really going to be a wait and see. How long are we going to wait? For the retailers in the group, I don't think you want to wait very long. I think you're anxious to get open, but there are people saying it could be 3 years before we're the other side of this. And I can't imagine how that works in my previous life working at Marriott. Hotels just can't stay open if they're not booking rooms. And retailers can't stay open if they're not selling stuff. So I'm not sure how that actually works. And I can't imagine, what do? You stand 6 feet away with a plexiglass screen between you and the guest when you're trying to show them something really priceless. That's another sort of monkey wrench in the interaction game, which is so critical to how you buy that. So I don't know. I have to be honest. I just don't know. I wish I did. I think, but I think anyone who suggests that they do know, I would like to get with them right away because we could all be very, very wealthy. But it's one of those complexities that it's full of dichotomies and ambivalence.
Well, we're pondering. Tobias would like to know, does brand transparency, product sourcing, and business conduct matter even more now, or was it already just a requirement? Is it a new trajectory, the same trajectory, only faster, or has nothing really changed? What do you guys think?
Well, I think for us, it's become a big part of our business model, but was before COVID. So part of us really getting back to our roots, which is featuring these small batch designer makers, we're really trying to only work with people whose ethics are in line with ours. And it's a part of our story and it's a part of their story. And so, we work with Jennifer Dawes, who is like the Mother Earth, and it's her birthday today, by the way. But anyway, I'm really proud to be able to share her story with my clients because her story's in line with my story. And I love the story of Sarah from Amali, who was a mom and tied her baby in a swaddle on the front of her while she sat at the bench making jewelry. She didn't want to give up being a mom so that she could continue to work at the bench, and she found a way to make it work. And so I do think that that product sourcing is important. If you're not passionate about the product that you're selling and you believe in it wholeheartedly, that's going to shine through to your client. I think that you have to have this level of authenticity and you have to believe in what you're doing because now people need connections more than ever. And if I'm not connecting with my partners enough that I can tell my customers about that connection for them to find their connection, then it's pointless. I think now everything just needs to have more meaning than it did before. COVID has made that abundantly clear to me and to us, and I'm already seeing it with our clients.
I'd like to chime in there too. Hi, Tobias. He's the friend. I also think that brand transparency is going to be more important. than ever. If you haven't communicated it well, you need to do it, because ethical, the whole ethical background of jewelry, where it's sourced around gemstones, diamonds, all of this has become very important. And many of the retailers and jewelers and the customers are seeing the importance of it and care. And I think that, again, back to this caring about the earth, where we're living, the environment we're living in, the environments we're walking into, those are all going to play a bigger role than they ever have before. And so that goes to sourcing and your supply chains and all of that. And then only the other thing I wanted to say is that jewelry is an art form. It's something that's handmade. It is a very different product than water or consumer products. And I think that in itself inherently, there's an attraction there because you can connect with the artist. And the smaller stores, as opposed to the big Marriotts or the big chains, I think will have an easier time. And I think the independent doing it right is going to have an uptick because, again, it's just the scale, the trust factor, being able to handle and change as opposed to having to do it corporate wide.
Well, and I think that's important, Pam, because a lot of times our independents think, oh, I can't compete with these giant stores. Right now, your flexibility is a huge advantage. Your inherent, like the size of your business makes you inherently more flexible. We have to embrace it personally, but it is an advantage right now if you'll use it for that.
I love that. Like literally, you said that, and everyone's heads were going up and down, like the dog on the back of the car. You know, it's not surprising to me that and I think we probably began to see this anyway as a rising trend. You know, there used to be a time where Starbucks had like one design idea and they put it out everywhere and they blasted it across the world. But then you got Howard Schultz going, yeah, but you know, this is sort of getting away from that idea of the unique experience I had in standing with the barista in a small little shop with a newspaper. And so they went to like 3 ideas that they then have a certain degree of flexibility in. I think the rise of boutique hotel brands like Design Hotels at Marriott's Boutique or Tribute or Autograph or those brands that I was connected to is that they are unique. And it is that we will continue to seek out those experiences that are, I hate using, well, I don't hate using the word authentic, but those things that are built in a story that I can connect to because it's like this ring on my finger. I bought it in Sedona at a great little jewelry shop. I don't remember the jewelry shop, but I remember the story of the artist and how I spent and that I was going to drop my son off at school. And that's what is the residue of the experience. I wear it every day, so I'm always reminded of that trip. But I have that as a memory moment of my brand connection to a product that simply represents that. And I think we will continue to see the rise in these bespoke environments because I think they're inherently more intriguing. We love the novelty of experience, right? And that's why I think you go any mall USA and it's boredom because they're all frankly the same. And they're chain stores who have the same products within the same categories. And I think that at least when I go out, I look around the corners that I don't know what's there, or over the fences, or into the courtyards, or I've toured Dharavi slum in Mumbai, you know, specifically because I said to the tour guide, I don't want to go to that, you know, place. I want to go there. He goes, no, you don't want to go there. I go, no, you do want to go there. And so I got a tour, and I spent 4 hours in this remarkable experience that I'll never forget. I think that's really important, and will be ever increasingly important.
The one thing that has become so apparent to me over the last 10 weeks is that love and special occasions haven't stopped. And life is going on. And I see such the glass half full in those moments. And it's very enlightening. And it's a good reminder that we're so lucky in what we do in the jewelry industry, especially because we're a part of people's milestones. People generally buy jewelry because it's a birthday, it's an anniversary, it's a promotion, it's I just got divorced. Whatever it is, it's a moment in time. It's a trip to Sedona that you really want to remember. And so people tell their life story with their jewelry. I have jewelry that I know was my 10th wedding anniversary. Yes, exactly. And so we're still a part of that story, and it's still happening, and people are still having special occasions that they're wanting to mark. And so that's good, as long as that continues happening, which it is in a pandemic. I find job security in that. Love is still happening. People still find beauty in art, and it's up to us to make sure that we're not losing track of these special things because the world's on pause or there's something really scary happening. People are finding a lot of comfort in that, and we're so lucky that we get to be a part of those milestones. It's up to us to make that experience special and memorable, especially right now. Let's not remember, that it was my 50th birthday today and it was pandemic and I couldn't have a party. Like, let's remember it by this special keepsake that I'll have for the rest of my life that someday my daughter will have. It just happened to happen during this remarkable time.
Well, and on that profoundly important note, we are at 7 minutes after the hour, so I'm going to have to wrap it up. First of all, to our audience, I will make sure that all of you have the contact information about each of our speakers, so you'll get that along with the replay, so everybody can review this information and get a hold of these folks. I just kind of want to review. So I think what we're saying is retail isn't about the physical space itself, but what you do within the physical space. And that's about how we merchandise the work and how well we know our customers to make sure the right work is there, and how we tell the stories and cultivate the business culture that is capable of bringing those stories forward. And retail has had to become more flexible over the last few years, or at least it needed to. And that flexibility is going to continue to need to be part of what we bring to our business thinking going forward. So values matter. Do you know the answer to your 3 questions? Who am I? What do I do that makes me different? Why do I matter? That's, if you're answering questions within that construct, you're going to find the right answers for your business, and they're going to be different than the business down the street that may also happen to sell jewelry. Did I miss any key thoughts there, speakers?
No, but I also want to thank you, Andrea, for putting this all together and for leading us and for moderating us so beautifully. And it was a pleasure speaking with everybody else. So I'm honored.
Oh, well, I get to surround myself with experts and then have fun. This is great. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. Thank you to NJSA for letting us do this very fun series every single week for free for the jewelry industry. It's an incredible service that you offer. We do have more exciting webinars coming up every week between now and the end of June. Then I think we'll move back to a bi-weekly schedule. So again, thank you, Pam and Melissa and David and Eric. You guys were great. I appreciate your time. And for the rest of you, thanks for joining us again for another hour and 9 minutes this week. I hope everything's going well for you and that you are staying safe and healthy and optimistic, because there are more good things to come. So bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.